It doesn't matter. I just need to know what we're doing so I can be prepared. Like one way or another, I need the right script up.
I don't know why you would require that. It's never been something we've done on this show is be prepared.
All right, so Queen Mary it is.
Queen Mary it is. We've
All
been
right.
recording this whole time. I've started leaving these early, like, beginning recordings into the show before we run the intro. I'm like, listen, we're
People
fucked
can
up.
see how dumb we are. All right.
Like, if they didn't know before,
Cool.
welcome, new listeners. Here we go. Hi.
Hi. Hi, you.
Hi, you. Are you? Are you high?
I wish.
I wish, right? Welcome to History of a Haunting. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Laura.
And we have a really cool episode today, guys. Laura, I don't have any EVPs. Do you have anything?
No.
No, we're just going to jump right in.
Let's do it. Yeah. This is
That's
a big
fitting.
episode.
This is a big episode. This is a big episode. And it's fitting. Jumping right in is the fitting with where we're taking you guys. We're going to revisit the Queen Mary. Yay! So Laura and I had told you a couple of months back that we were going to start revisiting some of the podcast's older episodes. This particular episode was episode 7. And this was when Archie and I were recording on my Mac laptop at the island in my kitchen. And so the audio isn't great and the editing is bumpy and the research is kind of rough. And so Laura and I got together and we were like, hey, let's try to basically revisit these locations. We've got better research techniques now, and we have met a ton of people in the industry that have had experiences at some of these tried and true locations, and the Queen Mary is no different. So we have a lot of news stories to tell you about the Queen Mary. She has gone through quite a bit since the pandemic, so I'm sure Laura's probably going to talk about that in the history portion. But essentially, that's the purpose of these revisits that we're going to be doing on older episodes. They are simply just to, expand upon what we talked about in those beginning episodes. They are by no means trying to replace those earlier episodes. We're not taking those down. We're keeping those up. But we've got new stuff to tell you and new ways to tell you those stuffs. Huh?
Awesome. I couldn't have said it better myself.
I mean, you could have tried. um, yeah, it's going to be a long episode. Guys, there's a lot of stuff. My part is expanded, is gotten a lot longer than the first one. And it's funny because I was listening. One of my sources is our episode 7. So I went back and I was listening to it. And about we're going through and we're talking about it, and Archie's like, all right, well, looks like he's like, we're probably gonna wrap this up soon, huh? And when he said that, I looked down at the timer on the episode and it was literally halfway through. And I chuckled and I said to him, well, you'd be wrong. And he went, oh. And I remember that moment so clearly, that he was just like, it had gone on for so long. And I had edited that episode. Had been recording that one for hours, and I had edited it way down to what you guys actually get. But he's like, all right, well, we should be wrapping this up soon. And I was like, nope, not at all. And it might be the same way for this one, guys. So yeah, sit down, grab a glass of your favorite beverage. I've got my little water here from my got Ghost, Gettysburg does, Cup. And I'll just turn it over to you, Laura. Go ahead and take it away. What are your sources? You guys, we have decided to axe the sources overlay. So we're just going to tell them to you, and then you can also look at them in the show notes. So, Laura, fire away.
All right. So my sources are titanicinco.com, wikipedia.org, ssmaritime.com, britannica.com, and latimes.com.
Alrighty.
Okay. So the RMS Queen Mary, if you are not familiar with it, is a retired British ocean liner that sailed primarily on the North Atlantic Ocean from 1936 to 1967 for the Cunard White Star Line. In the late 1920s, the Cunard Line faced an aging fleet of ocean liners, which included the Mauretania, and growing competition from rival companies. Cunard's answer was the Queen Mary and its sister ship, the Queen Elizabeth. Both were designed to be large, luxurious, and powerful. Our Queen Mary was the first of a pair of ships that was intended to provide a weekly service between Southampton and New York.
Oh, okay.
Right. So in December 1930, construction finally began at the John Brown shipyard in Clydebank, Scotland, on what was then known as hole number 534. However, a year later, on the 11th of December 1931, construction was halted due to a worldwide economic crisis, a time we all now know as the Great Depression.
Ah, yes.
So, hole 534 languished until the 3rd of April 1934, when, due to a combination of a large government subsidy and a merger for the Cunard and White Star lines, it made it possible to restart construction.
And these are the folks that did the Titanic.
Right.
Okay. White Star or Cunard?
White Star was the Titanic.
Okay.
Yeah. So the work was completed by August, and she was launched on 26th of September and taken to its fitting out berth. She was 1,019.4 feet long with a beam of 118 feet and had a gross tonnage of 81,237.
That's really fucking rude to say about a lady.
Right.
That's rude. You don't ever say a lady's weight. What the fuck?
Right.
And you certainly don't call it tonnage.
Gross tonnage, by the way.
Okay.
So she had 3 funnels, and you don't talk about her funnels. 20. Just spit your drink out. 24 boilers and 4-person single reduction geared steam turbines, which could produce 158,000 kilowatts of power. So she could accommodate 2,139 passengers, 776 of which were first class, 784 cabin class, 579 tourist class passengers, and she had a crew of over 1,100.
Damn.
That's a big-ass crew.
That's a big-ass crew, man.
Mm-hmm. So among some facilities available on board the Queen Mary, the liner featured 2 indoor swimming pools, beauty salons, libraries, and children's nurseries for all 3 classes, a music studio and lecture hall, telephone connectivity to anywhere in the world, outdoor paddle tennis courts, and dog kennels.
Wow, okay.
Right?
God.
The largest room on board was the cabin class, first class, main dining room Grant's, which was also known as the Grand Salon. So spanning 3 stories in height and anchored by wide columns, the ship had many air conditioning public rooms on board.
Wow.
The cabin class swimming pool facility spanned over 2 decks in height. And this was the first ocean liner to be equipped with her own Jewish prayer room, part of a policy to show that British shipping lines avoided the anti-Semitism that was evident in Nazi Germany.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So the cabin class main dining room featured a large map of the transatlantic crossing with twin tracks symbolizing the winter and spring routes. Obviously, they went further south to avoid icebergs. Lesson learned.
Thank God.
Right. So during each crossing, a little motorized model of the Queen Mary would travel along the mural to indicate where they were en route.
That's cute. So like
Isn't
when you fly and it's like, this is where your airplane is.
Their little map.
Yeah.
So they had like a big old thing and it would just, move along. Ding, ding, ding.
That's really quite technologically advanced for the era.
Ah, absolutely. I mean, this was first. I mean, they didn't spare expenses. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
It was pretty fancy. So, as an alternative to the main dining room, the Queen Mary featured a separate class cabin veranda grill on the sun deck at the upper aft of the ship. The Veranda Grill was an exclusive a la carte restaurant with a capacity of approximately 80 passengers and was converted to the Starlight Club at night. So, also on
Oh,
board was the Observation Bar, which is an Art Deco styled lounge with wide ocean views. So, woods from different regions of the British Empire were used in her public rooms and staterooms.
oh.
Accommodation ranged from fully equipped, luxurious cabin first class staterooms to modest and cramped third class cabins.
Okay, so where we would be.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
The legend has it that when construction was finished, the board of directors at Cunard decided to name her the Queen Victoria, after one of England's most beloved queens. So the delegation went to ask King George V for his blessing on the proposed name. So, quote, "We have decided to name our new ship after England's greatest queen." And they were, of course, referring to Queen Victoria,
Sure.
the King George's grandmother, of course. But the queen, the king supposedly quickly said, "My wife, who was Queen Mary, will be delighted that you are naming the ship after her."
So
And
what
you
am I?
can't really back up and be like, "No, we meant the greatest one."
Exactly. It is one of my favorite stories. And they wanted to name it Victoria to keep up with the IA part, right? Like,
Yep.
right. Okay. Yeah.
But so the ship was named Queen Mary instead of Queen Victoria.
I mean, that's some power, though. We can't anger him. Like, so now I guess it's Mary. What if her
Right?
name
Like, what
had
are you
been
gonna say?
like, what if her name had been like Brunhilde or something?
Yeah. Wow.
Or God forbid, what if her name had been Laura?
I mean, Queen Laura. That sounds actually
Queen
that's
Laura.
nicer. Um, so on September 26, 1934, the ship was launched in the presence of His Majesty King George V and, of course, Queen Mary.
Ah,
Uh, the RMS Queen Mary's historic maiden voyage to New York commenced on Wednesday, May 27th. Um, and she departed fully laden as bookings had been sold out long in advance. So apparently, the passenger list read like a page from the who's who. First
uh,
class passengers included knights, ladies, dignitaries, and famous artists. So during her maiden voyage, there were even two stowaways found. They were retained and returned to Southampton to face justice, but at least they can say that they sailed in the Queen Mary.
I mean, for a minute, yeah.
Right? Good for you.
No regrets.
Right? So, despite expectations that the ship would try to break speed records on her first voyage, a thick fog destroyed any hope of that. So, in July, the Queen Mary spent a short time in dry dock while adjustments were made to the propellers and the turbines. And when she returned to service in August, she made a record voyage from Bishop's Rock to Ambrose Light and took the Blue Riband from the SS Normandy, who was the competing French liner.
Oh,
So
wow.
that is the fastest. That's the record, right? The Blue
Right.
Riband. So
History is filled with the English and the French competing with each other.
it sure is. So, and this went back and forth, right? They would lose it to the Normandy and then get it back. So in
uh,
August of 38, she regained the Blue Riband from the Normandy for a second time and set new records for both the eastbound and westbound crossings. So she was not only beautiful, she was very fast.
yes. And
Just how I like my
wasn't
ladies.
there, but we don't talk about their funnels.
Right, we don't.
Don't. Uh, and wasn't like the Titanic also trying to like break speed records, which is why he was like going at like full steam ahead through that field of icebergs. Like I think that was something that came out later about the Titanic that
They should have been going
breaking,
slower.
yeah, and breaking speed records was like I guess a big deal like for any
Hmm.
ship to, you know, let's not get him there safe. Let's just get him there quick.
Right. Yeah. Like, hey, let's get there. Um, so as the Queen Mary departed Southampton on August 30th in 1939, sailing via Cherbourg, France, bound for New York, um, little did anyone know that this would be the great Queen's last peacetime voyage, for the very next day the Nazis invaded Poland.
Ah,
So
yes.
on the 31st, the captain was informed that for security reasons, he was to run a zigzag course across the Atlantic and operate under blackout conditions in order to elude German submarines.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so amongst the celebrities on board for this voyage were Bob and Dolores Hope, although he was traveling solely as a passenger and was not on board as an entertainer.
Oh my
It
God.
is. Yeah, it is said that he continuously made light, even fun of the situation, and that it was not well received, especially by the British passengers.
Oh shit. Well, listen. You gotta, I mean, you, excuse me, you, I just kicked my entire desk. Um, you have to. You have to
I
like
mean,
break
yeah,
that tension, like, but also, British passengers
yeah.
are, were probably, you know,
I mean, since yeah, it hits a little closer to home than for them.
a little bit.
So most passengers were very apprehensive for the next 4 nights as all exterior lights were extinguished and lookouts were posted around the ship, and the helmsman continually steering a zigzag course, making the ship a difficult target for a torpedo. So
Wow.
after 4 worrying nights, as her passengers finally arrived safely in New York on Monday, September 4th, she was then laid up awaiting new orders, which would take another 6 months.
Do you want to pause real quick?
Yeah, let me just.
Okay, sorry guys. Laura went to tend to her dog, and then the second I paused it, my internet went out, and then it was a whole thing, and she was waiting for me, and I'm like, sorry, it's back on. And then she took a minute to log back in because she got kicked out, and then I was like, anytime you're ready. Like I wasn't the one that caused like the bulk of the problem.
It's pretty par for the course in our relationship.
I mean,
Um,
whatever.
you know,
She was zigzagging through the dark with Bob Hope.
yeah, pretty much.
Okay, good.
All right. So they did make it, like I said earlier, to New York. So, on March 1st, 1940, official orders came from the admiral calling for the Queen Mary to sail to Sydney, Australia, where she would be refitted for war duties. So upon arrival, she was handed over to the Cockatoo Docks. I just wanted to say that, an engineering company.
I mean, they sound
No one
legit.
cares, but it's fun. And where she was converted for her new role as a trooper. So they took out all her nice furnishings
Boo.
and replaced them, yeah, with a. They were replaced by tiers of bunks and hammocks. So for protection, a number of small caliber guns were fitted. However, as it is said, her main protection was her impressive speed. So on May 4th, 1940, she left for the Clyde, which is Clydebank, Scotland, with over 5,000 troops of the Australian Imperial Force on board, arriving on June 16th.
You
So
said Clyde
thereafter,
Bank, like we should all just know. You're like, Clyde Bank in Scotland. And I'm like,
well, they in some of the articles they just kept calling it the Clyde, so I had to look it up. So I was like, I know now.
oh, okay. And the rest of us
That's old hat.
dummies. Yeah,
That's
now
why I
I've
put
learned
it in
it.
parentheses to make sure that I said that instead of just saying the Clyde, because I was like, what the fuck is this Clyde they keep talking about?
Who
Who's the
is this
Clyde?
guy? Is he in charge of the cockatoos? What is that?
Right? What's going on? Um, so after she dumped those Australians over at the Clyde, she went to Singapore, carrying troops due to the Japanese threat of the region. So after an overhaul in Singapore, she returned to Sydney again when she commenced her 5-year-long trooping duties, during
Wow.
which time she transported over 800,000 troops. That's pretty impressive.
That's kind of a lot.
I mean, a smidge. So she was dry docked again in February of 1941, where after she sailed between Australian ports and Singapore and the Suez Canal until November. But as the Indian Ocean was becoming increasingly dangerous, with war looking imminent in the Far East and Pacific, the Queen Mary sailed to Boston, where her trooping capacity was increased to 8,500 and heavier caliber guns and anti-aircraft cannons were fitted.
Ew, okay.
So they just made her a better bitch, basically. So after an
Added to
urgent,
her gross tonnage.
they did add to her gross tonnage, though, but they left her funnels alone.
Fucking
So,
man, man.
so after an urgent trip carrying U.S. troops to Sydney, the Queen Mary's future role was to be on the North Atlantic. By late July in 1942, she had returned to New York, and in the following months, she sailed to the Clyde and Suez, and then
In
returned to
Scotland.
the U.S. Right, with a complement of German POWs.
Oh, I forgot
So
about this.
Right. So on the 2nd of August 1942, she began a series of fast eastbound voyages carrying between 10 to 15,000 U.S. troops at a time. On one of these voyages, she had the worst collision of her career. So the Queen Mary required an anti aircraft escort when she approached on the Clyde. Amongst her escort was a cruiser HMS Kurosawa.
Kura,
Um, Kurosawa.
Kurakoa? I don't. We called it
Kurosawa.
Kurakoa in the first episode.
Kurosawa. Let's go
Sure.
with that.
Why not?
On the 2nd of October 1942, the escort ships were sighted. The Queen Mary was steaming at 28 knots in a zigzag pattern, whilst the Kurokawa, whose best speed was 26 knots, kept as close as possible. The Queen Mary overtook her escort and then resumed a zigzag pattern, but the Queen Mary collided with the Kurokawa close to its stern and sliced straight through the ship.
Fuck.
Yeah, of 430 crew members on the cruiser, only 101 survived. Although
Oh,
damaged beneath the waterline, the Queen Mary was able to continue. And with over 11,000 troops on board, she could not stop to assist and sailed straight to the Clyde.
damn.
So it was the policy at the time that.
Eddie. I didn't even see him jump up
Out
there.
of here. All right. You're your own fucking Germans. All right. It was the policy at the time that for safety reasons, the ship could not stop to pick up survivors as a threat of U-boats was present.
Sure.
And kittens.
And kittens.
Okay, so kittens. So in April 1943, she returned to England and then birthed in New York in May. So after this voyage, she would remain as a ferry service for U.S. troops for the remainder of the war. So she is perhaps best remembered for that role.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there were, however, many soldiers that perished during the war on board. Unfortunately, as part of security records weren't kept from World War II, but when the ship was in the Red Sea, there was no getting away from the fact that troops were crowded below in 120-degree temperatures. There was no ventilation. Portholes were welded shut because of blackouts, and they were losing people from heat prostration.
Kind of.
So,
I think there were. When listening to our original episode, I think it was something like, was it like 4 or 5 barrels at sea a day because of.
so during that period, there was a burial at sea every 4 hours.
Oh,
And yeah, there are also stories of soldiers who would literally jump ship as soon as the Queen Mary left New York. And who knows how many of those people drowned or how many made it to shore.
Jesus. I'm not doing this again. Goodbye.
I mean,
Good
it's not
God.
it's not like they were going somewhere fun. So,
She wasn't the fancy thing she used to be.
no, she sure wasn't. So, listen, not all of us are. So, Prime Minister Winston Churchill did credit the Queen Mary for shortening the war by as much as a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, because of her ability to transport so many troops.
Wow, that's new. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, at the conclusion of the war, she continued to transport troops, war brides, and their babies home until 1946.
And their
mean-
babies.
And the babies. So after the war, the Queen Mary resumed its career as a passenger liner. Following a retrofit, the ship made its first post-war commercial voyage in July of 1947. It enjoyed huge popularity until the 60s, when airplane travel led to dwindling interest in transatlantic liners. The Queen Mary added new routes, including a Mediterranean cruise. However, in 1966, Cunard announced that it was selling the ship. And the following year, the city of Long Beach, California, bought the Queen Mary for $3.45 million, planning to turn it into a hotel and tourist attraction.
That's actually not much for a ship.
No.
That's not much at all. Huh.
So in October of 67, the Queen Mary departed for Long Beach on its last voyage. Yeah. So the ship then underwent extensive renovations that cost about $31 million. So there we go.
Oh, there's where it is. There's the
There.
shoe drop.
So in 1971, the liner began hosting tours, and by year's end, a portion of its Museum of the Sea was open to the public. Queen Mary's Hotel began accepting guests the following year, and several restaurants were added. In 1983, Howard Hughes' Spruce Goose the world's largest flying boat, was
Yes.
installed next to the Queen Mary as an additional attraction. However, that plane was moved to Oregon in 1992.
Is that where it's at? Because we did, when I was little,
Yeah.
we did go and see the Queen Mary and the Spruce Goose. And my
Oh,
mom and
how
I were just
cool.
talking about that when we were writing this episode. And she was like, "What happened to that?" I'm like, "It got moved, but I'm not sure where."
Well, there you go. I don't know if it's
But,
still there, but that's where
mm,
it was originally moved.
mm,
So Disney purchased the boat in 1990 with the
mhm.
intentions to create a theme park called Port of Disney, which would be dedicated to ocean life around the world and encompass the ship and the land surrounding it. So on the ship itself, they added celebrity guides for tours who were impersonating celebrities who had traveled on the ship in its heyday. They
Oh,
had themed
cool.
parties and high-end retailers. So one of the tours Disney implemented was called Haunted Passages, which capitalized on the many legends and rumors of mysterious happenings on the boat.
Yeah.
So besides the incident during World War II, there have been many tragic stories attached to the Queen Mary.
Yeah.
So there are nearly 50 reported deaths aboard the boat,
Mm.
from crew having accidents in the engine and boiler rooms to a young girl drowning in the first class pool. Rumors abound of, truly grisly murders and unexplained deaths aboard too.
Mm.
Um,
Which, yeah, I'll
so
cover in my part.
yeah, you'll get to it. So, the vast majority of the deaths were from natural causes, like heart attacks on board and stuff like that,
Sure.
except for this guy called Petter. He was a young seaman. I'm sure that you'll talk about him again too. And plus, I got to say seaman, crushed by a mechanical door during an emergency drill. And
Yeah.
Stark, a senior second officer who died after drinking some gin that turned out to be cleaning fluid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or or also suggested that since his death occurred in Southampton, England, that it could have been some very cheap dockyard gin.
Oh.
But not too long after Disney had taken over the ship, the project failed. And Disney abandoned the idea of Port Disney when the company's lease on the area was not renewed.
Mm.
Some claim it was low attendance numbers, but others say the city of Long Beach bungled the deal.
Oh.
So, yeah, operating the Queen Mary proved challenging, sorry. And on several occasions, Long Beach struggled to find firms willing to assume control, including maintenance of the ship. The
Mm-hmm.
Queen Mary closed in 92 and it reopened the following year. The ship also closed from 2020 to 2022 during the pandemic. So in 2021, the lease for the Queen Mary was surrendered back to the city of Long Beach, who has since begun repairs to restore the ship back to its original glory.
Yeah.
However, they did demolish some of the lifeboats, and it was very much um, on the table to
Mm.
sink it.
Yes, they had
So,
like three options, and
mhm,
yeah, one of them was really expensive. One of them was like scrap it for parts, and the other one
yeah,
was sink it.
hmm
Yeah, the paranormal community was horrified at the very idea they would sink that ship.
well, and the issue was it needed it still. I mean, they're working on it now, but the repairs that it needed were so extensive that they were actually worried it was going to collapse.
Yeah, and because it
So,
was
I mean,
like
sinking it for like safety reasons. So,
right, because wasn't it like the underwater part? I mean, because it's not dry docked, but it's also not
no,
like
but
the USS Wilmington that's like stuck in 14 feet of mud. So there were like underwater parts that were like rusting and being eaten away and just sort of from sitting there for
right,
decades.
yeah, some of the support for the ship was actually like rusted away.
Yeah.
So, but they are restoring her, the city, and she is open as a hotel, or they do all kinds of tours.
Mm-hmm.
So ghosty and otherwise.
They
You can
really
also go
do.
there for like, dinner. You can get married there. There's all kinds of stuff. So it's still open. It's still kicking ass,
Thank
and you can
God. I
totally go
was
visit her.
so relieved when they were like, "We're gonna save her. We're gonna keep her," because the idea that they might sink her was horrifying. It was like,
Right.
but there are so many of us that haven't gotten to investigate her yet. Why did you can't do this?
Please keep her.
Please.
All right. So that is the history of the Queen Mary.
Good job. I love it. Yeah, and you brought a lot of new stuff that I didn't know. that I didn't
Oh,
know that
hey,
Archie
I always
had
love
me.
that.
Yeah. Well, and you know what found in, because I don't have my notes from 2019. That was years ago and like 6 computers ago. But
Mhm.
so I was finding new and like updated information and on the hauntings and stuff like that. And so I thought, Laura surely will as well with the history. So yeah, great job. It is um, my son's uncle and his wife got married on the Queen Mary. And so they go back and they either go back and have lunch or whatever, like a special meal every year on their anniversary. And
That's cute.
it's so cute. Yeah. One of my favorite stories, I didn't go to their wedding, but one of my favorite stories is that Koi's dad, Josh, at the reception, got a little inebriated and started taking Jeremy and Tracy's wedding guests on impromptu ghost tours throughout the ship.
That's awesome.
I was like, yeah, Josh. There's a reason why Josh and I connected so well because we love a lot of the same stuff. So,
Awesome.
okay, guys, the hauntings. I think I have everything. I was looking and I'm all, oh shit, I don't have. When you were doing your part when we came back from the little break or whatever, I was like,
Hiatus. Sure.
yeah, I was like,
Internet hiatus.
yeah, I'm all, I forgot to put the explanation for this one thing down, and I still have forgotten to do that. So we will be right back after this brief word from nobody. Let me just find my notes to add real quick, guys. Again, it's the same as in 2019. We don't know what we're doing. At least I don't. That's the one consistent thing from 2019 to then is me. So maybe, hi, I'm the problem. It's me. I'll be right back.
Right.
All right, guys. Sorry about that. So my sources are timemagazine.com, yesterdaysamerica.com, crescentvalleyweekly.com, usghostadventures.com, my former company. I don't work for them anymore, but that's who I worked for when I did the paranormal tours. They're kind of in a little bit of hot water with they own the Lizzie Borden house, and it's a whole thing. Look it up if you want to find out. There's a guy that opened a coffee shop next door, and they're mad about it. Anywho, worldofcruising.co.uk, whatculture.com, queenmarycruises.net, and History of a Haunting Podcast, Episode 7. The photos that we're going to show in today's episode are courtesy of Ron Iacovetti. He is one of the founders and the lead investigators of Gonyak Paranormal. We have talked about him a number of times. He is also the one doing Satacom and with Tony and Cherie and his girlfriend Lourdes. So Ron had a really fabulous experience on the Queen Mary, and I remembered that. So we're going to show you what he captured in a little bit. But I do want to tell you, in addition to my son's aunt and uncle getting married on the Queen Mary, his grandparents and this same uncle were walking on the upper decks of the ship, which is all wood flooring. And his grandfather, Frank, was about 20 to 25 feet ahead of his grandmother and his uncle. And so Lori and Jeremy were just walking along on the ship, and the two of them heard a Wookiee? What? A Wookiee? It might have been, but I was trying to say woman and walking. Anyway, a woman walking behind them. And it sounded like it was a woman in high heels, and she was like walking very quickly, like she was getting ready to charge right past them. So they stopped and they turned around to step aside to let her go by, and nobody was there.
Oh,
Which, yeah, I was like, what? And Lori told me this story when Archie and I were talking about starting the podcast and how the Queen Mary was going to be a location that we were eventually going to cover. And then she told me the story, and then a couple of years later, I was talking to her husband, Koi's grandfather, Frank, about it, and he told his version of the story, which is pretty much the same. But as he told it, he got goosebumps on his arms just remembering the story. And I looked down and I was like, whoa. And he goes, yeah, it still creeps me out. I'm all, oh my God. So They turned to move out of the way, but nobody was there. So they kind of shrugged and they continued on, and then they heard the footsteps again. They noticed that when they walked, they would hear the footsteps. And when they stopped, the footsteps would stop. Always behind them and always in heels. Now, Lori doesn't ever wear heels. And there was nobody on this side of the ship with them at the time. Frank, by this point, had gotten about, I don't know, 40 or 50 feet ahead of them with all of the stopping and starting that Lori and Jeremy were doing. So he turns around and sees that they're way back behind him. And so he walks back to them to ask them what's up, and they ask him if he heard the same footsteps, and he was like, no, I didn't hear anything. And so, like I said, he would later recount the story to me and get goosebumps telling me the story. So I wanted to start my part off with that. And I did share it in the original episode, but it's still one of my very favorite stories of paranormal activity on the Queen Mary, that none of them could explain it. To this day, they're like, we have no idea what that was. So this big beauty, as Laura described her, with her gross tonnage and her funnels and her big guns, was named one of the most haunted locations in America by Time Magazine in 2019. So spirits can pop up in all sorts of places, but the Queen Mary boasts a stocked roster, including often glimpsed spirits that I'm going to talk to you guys about this evening or this morning, wherever you're listening to us. The White Lady, John Henry, John Petter, and Winston Churchill, among others. So almost from the moment the ship docked in Long Beach, stories of paranormal activity began to surface. Those working to prepare her for dry dock would tell of seeing strange figures out of the corners of their eyes, or they would hear conversations when nobody was present. Tools would disappear only to turn up somewhere else on the ship and in areas where the owner of them had never been. There was a psychic by the name of Peter James who has since passed away, but he said that there were at least 600 spirits on board the Queen Mary. That's a lot. I know. I was like, fuck. And possibly more that we have actually yet to find. It is known and recorded that, you said 47 or 49 people died on board?
Mm.
Yeah.
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 There's conflicting accounts, but usually it's around
Sure.
47.
Right around that? Okay. So the reason for this sudden manifestation of spirits on the ship may never be known, but some have speculated that the permanent residents of the Queen Mary knew that their days of sailing the open seas were over, and showing their displeasure, they showed up on the ship. Others theorize that the displeasure comes from the wanton destruction of the ship as it was being transformed from ocean liner into tourist attraction. So whatever the case may be, one thing is certain: the spirits are aboard the Queen Mary, and they are letting us know that they are there and that they are there to stay. So from crew members of the Queen Mary to chilling accounts of strange and supernatural occurrences that are said to be haunting the decks of the famous ship. There is one such story. It made me laugh, but I was also like, I would hate this. One such story is that of a former captain who experienced frequent nightmares about running in circles and then until finally appearing in front of a white figure located at the bridge. That was his recurring nightmare. He'd be running around in circles, and then he'd stop, and then he would be like at the bridge in front of this like ghostly white figure. Wow. And I'm like, that's kind of funny, but also I would hate that. Every night, that would
be super fucking annoying.
Wouldn't it be so annoying? Mm-hmm. So shadow people lurk around every corner, and they dart across hallways. Many people have photos with these specters in them. So here is where we bring in the first set of Ron's pictures. So these are two photos, and I'm going to show you the first one first.
Good plan.
All right. I really wanted to, present Ron's stuff with class, but never mind. Here we go. So he says that this one, there were 40 plus people on this particular investigation event, and all 40 were facing this boiler room doorway.
Mm-hmm.
except for the tour guide that was talking to us, and that tour guide's out of frame. Nobody saw anything or anyone in that door in the distance. He said, I know I didn't. And he was stunned to see what was in the photo later on. So you can see the doorway and you can see what appears to be some sort of cloaked looking shadow figure. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a shadow and it's even covering it's in the doorway but also covering part of the so
Part
there's
of the
two doors, one
door.
open, one closed. So it's actually even covering one of the part of the white closed door. So you can definitely make out,
You
an
can
outline of
definitely
something
make it
there.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Here's a
And
zoomed in.
we'll put these online for our
Yeah,
audio listeners too, so you guys can
we
check
will.
these out as well.
Yeah, for sure. Here's the zoomed in version of this photo.
Oh yeah.
It's
It looks like a dress, maybe
it
like a ball
does.
gown. It looks like a ball gown
Yeah. Does it look
because it
kind
looks
of
like it comes to the cinched waist and then
and then
flows
flows
out.
out like it's a
Hmm.
flowy material and then maybe like a gloved arm? Like it's just I don't know. I mean, it's all
Oh yeah,
shadow, but it's
but there's
really
definite edges. Like you can see, make out. It doesn't. It's not blurry. It's very
yes.
defined.
Yeah, yeah. And for our skeptic to be saying that, I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's right, Laura. Tell him, tell him. Okay. The
That's a good.
next
That's a good.
three,
That's a
it's
good
a good
catch.
one.
Hmm.
This next one. So this next one, EVPE is a weekly show with that started out with Tony and Sheree Rathman and Chris Allgood and Audra Keeler. It was just the four of them. But then when Chris and Audra were moving back here, they needed somebody to fill in for them, and they had Ron and Lourdes do that. And then it just so happened to be that the dynamic and the camaraderie between them, all of them, was so great that they brought Ron and Lourdes on permanently. So now it's a show hosted by 6 people. But I remember watching an episode where Ron had been on the show and he showed these photographs. And was like, what in the hell? I have never seen spirit photography or spirit photographs that look like this. And so when we were redoing this episode or revisiting this episode, I was like, I want Ron's photos in the show. So I contacted him and I'm like, hey, if I remember correctly, it was you that captured those photos on the Queen Mary. And he was like, yes, it was. And I'm like, can I show them? He's like, absolutely. So these are the same thing. It's one photo and it's zoomed in. Right? I've got 3 different versions to show you. I really don't think that it's going to take a lot of explaining because this is something truly mind-blowing, I think. So
All
here
right.
is the first one. Let me see if I can get that.
I'm like, quit talking to show me.
So,
All right.
this is pictures of the doorway. This one is the original photo. Nobody was there. He actually made sure of it before taking a picture. No patrons. It was actually closed. The female bartender in the room had just walked out of frame to the photo's right. So it wasn't even open. They were getting ready. So this is the original picture.
So it's looking into the Art Deco lounge called the Observation Bar.
Yes, yes. Which it actually, now that the Queen Mary's back open again, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is no longer there because I looked. So
Oh
this is
wow.
called
Okay.
something different, and yeah, the restaurants are different, named different
Hmm.
now. But this is what it was at the time, and he said that this was taken. This one was taken. The first one, sorry, the first one was taken 2013 on a Samsung phone.
Hmm.
These were taken in 2017 on an iPhone. So not even like fancy
Yeah.
camera.
Hmm.
So, do you see anything abnormal in this photo?
Not that I can tell. There's like something weird kind of in the background, but it's too blurry to like make out.
Yeah, it's kind of too far away. Let's zoom that
Hmm.
in.
Oh, it's a person.
So, yes, there was nobody standing outside those windows when he took this photograph. He made sure he didn't want anybody in the photo. So, and he didn't notice it until he went back to look at the photos. So, you're looking, it's a zoomed in of the picture, the original
Hmm.
photograph, and we're focusing on the windows. Here's
So
another zoom in. Do you want to give your
through the
thought?
window, you can, I mean, clearly see what I would say is a person
Mm-hmm.
standing there. Yeah. I
kind of
mean,
like with their arm like around their neck, like their like
yeah,
arm
like
is
kind of
up.
weirdly, like they're doing something. Yeah, like they're
Like
reaching
maybe
into their.
scratching the back of their head or something.
I would
Maybe.
almost say even like going like reaching into their jacket inside pocket, maybe.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's
You
take
know,
a look
like
at
how
the
you would
closer
do your
one.
arm would
Yeah,
be up
right.
like that
Yeah.
or
Let's look.
behind. I mean, it's hard to see, but
It's hard to see. Yeah. Let's take a closer look. Now what do you see?
oh, creepy fucker. Okay, so it strikes me as being like dated. Um,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, his arm is, you're right, like looks more like it's behind his head, closer in, and it appears he's talking to someone actually
A
who is
smaller
sitting.
boy. Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
somebody,
like
a
a
smaller
boy or
kid standing in
somebody.
front of him.
Yeah, either sitting
Yeah.
in front of him or yeah, somebody smaller in stature.
And it's
And
crazy
it
because you
looks
can
like an
even,
older guy with like maybe
yeah, maybe
glasses. Yeah.
glasses. Yeah. And you can see the collar, like of the
Hmm.
jacket. You can see that collar. And then the kid is facing him, but like looking off, like toward, like beyond him.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
not the most nuts thing? And
That's yeah, it's wow, what a
Is
photo.
they, yeah,
All
and
right.
they
Yeah.
even
Okay.
they even appear a little transparent because you can see the lights. So there's like this little ball of light, like right like in the armpit area, and then there's like a
Hmm.
bar of light, and then that bar travels through the body, like you can see it. So they're kind of transparent too.
Yeah, but there's no way this could be like a reflection type thing or anything like that. Like
No, there's
that's
nothing because
yeah,
looking at the
wild. That's
original,
awesome.
there's nobody in that room.
Yeah, right, right.
And he walked in and made sure, and the only person was the bartender who stepped out for him to go back behind the bar. And so then he went out and he took that picture because he wanted to just, the ambiance and
So the
what
bar,
happened.
yeah. Cool.
Is that not so crazy?
That's super crazy.
I freaking love it. I am like, when I saw that on EVPE, I was like, who is this guy? And when was this taken? And when can I get to the Queen Mary to try to replicate it?
Cool.
So yeah. So
You guys definitely check these out on our website.
for sure.
Um,
Yeah. On our website, we'll do it on our social media. We always say that and then I forget to, but I will, I promise I will, guys, because these are pretty amazing. So yeah. So photos like that are captured all the time around the Queen Mary. Now, there's a story that I came across. There was a couple who had gotten married on the ship. No, it wasn't my son's aunt and uncle. If it was, it would have really been funny. But a couple who had gotten married on the ship and spent their wedding night there, they stated that an undead visitor walked into their room while they were sleeping shortly after midnight, waking them up. They watched him walk over and loiter near the locked door of the adjoining room, and then he turned to stare at them, but he wasn't threatening. They heard loud music and party chatter in that next room over, and this dull yellow light illuminated the figure from like under the door, like the crack under the door. And the guy was dressed like a sailor. So it was if he had had too much to drink and just wandered into the wrong room,
mhm.
which starts the first of my list of questions. But um, they said that they were sure that the adjoining door to that other room was locked. Now, he returned about an hour later, and this time they shouted at him to get out and stay out. This time. Okay. Again, adding to the questions. The next morning, they asked each other who had the nerve to enter the wrong room twice. And why are you not putting like a chain on the door or you know what I mean?
Like a yeah, something.
Something. So the next morning, they told the front desk about what happened and were told, quote, "I'm sorry, sir. The adjoining door in your room was bolted shut years ago and can't be reopened." So I guess they figured he just staggered in from the party. And then he told them that, and that room next to you was vacant last night.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So happy start to your married life. Have fun. Enjoy. So now, regarding the collision with the Curacoa, down in the bow of the ship, there was a marine engineer who claimed to hear the sounds of rushing water, metal tearing, and men screaming, all on different occasions. A little while later, He would go on to read an article about the collision and said that, quote, the very area where I heard that rushing water was the exact same area that was damaged in the collision with the Kurakoa. This is what the crash would have sounded like. However, the ship was docked and in an operating hotel when this man heard all of that down there. So that
Yeah,
is super sad.
that is. And they do, like, I did read, and I didn't quite put it all on my part, but that most of the soldiers from the Kurakoa would have been pulled under by the Queen, Queen Mary's propeller
Yeah.
and like drowned that way.
Ugh. And chopped up. Oh.
Possibly.
Why'd I have to say that? Why'd I have to go there, Laura? Stop me.
So if it's in that area, that totally makes sense.
That totally makes sense, yeah. Others have had similar experiences and have also heard what sounds like dozens of hands pounding on the side of the ship, screaming to be let aboard. That is just disturbing on so many levels. Mm-hmm. So, as I mentioned earlier, there was John Petter, who was crushed by a watertight door. Senior Second Officer William Eric Stark, who accidentally drank cleaning fluid instead of gin. And the cook, who was baked alive by his own kitchen staff during World War II. How horrible do you have to be for your staff to be like, go fuck yourself? But arguably, the most notorious location on the ship for paranormal activity is Stateroom B340. Its paranormal occurrences stem from a horrid event, or so it is said. So everyone seems to have their own story about who or what haunts the room. In 1948, a third-class passenger named Walter J. Adamson mysteriously died there. Is it his ghost that haunts the place, or was he killed by the ghost? So a woman residing in the room reported being woken up after her duvet was aggressively yanked off the bed, upon where she clocked the sight of a darkened figure standing at the foot of the mattress. While she was screaming for a steward, the figure dissolved into the ether and vanished. Now, over the years, other guests have reported hearing someone or something scratching and knocking at the door in the early hours of the morning.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Scratching, why? Knocking, okay. Scratching, no. While others have witnessed the bathroom lights mysteriously turning on and off. So, staff routinely complain of running water in the bathroom despite the room having sat empty for days, while room attendants stated the bed covers were pulled off by an invisible force just after she had finished putting them on. Poor housekeeping. It's always housekeeping. That's what my mom has always said on this show. She's like, it's always housekeeping.
Tip them. Tip them well.
Tip them well. So apparently back in the 60s, during one of the final transatlantic cruises, before the ship was docked in Long Beach, a man went crazy and brutally murdered 2 women. His crimes were discovered, and he was locked in his third-class stateroom, either B222, 224, or 226. The door was locked, and a guard was posted outside. A little while later, he started pounding on the door, begging to be let out, saying somebody was in there with him, trying to kill him. Oh, okay. Well, now you know how it feels. So the guard ignored him, thinking it was a ruse to escape. Mm-hmm. After a while, the passenger quieted down, and the guard figured he went to sleep. So the next day, the ship arrives in New York, and the crew summoned the NYPD detectives, and when they went in to apprehend the murderer. When they opened the door to the stateroom, they found the man had been ripped apart and his entrails and limbs spread all over the room. But there was no way he could have done this to himself.
Wow.
Yeah. So upon the next sailing, the paranormal reports started coming in from that stateroom. So when it was docked in Long Beach, the 3 third-class staterooms were combined into the larger guest room B340. And the reports continued. By the 1980s, B340 was closed to booking because guests would leave in the middle of the night due to the volume of paranormal activity happening in the room.
That's great.
Isn't that so cool?
Mm-hmm.
So over the years, there have been variations of the story. A man killed his family in the cabin. A woman killed her husband. A husband killed his wife. A lone passenger's throat was cut. The list goes on and on. So for some reason, nobody can trace exactly what happened. The ship records show nothing happening in any of those rooms. Mm-hmm. So, according to Nicole Strickland, an author who wrote the book Spirited Queen Mary, the legend of B340 was invented in the late 80s or early 90s by employees of the Walt Disney Company, which owned the hotel at the time. So a few
Right.
cast members wanted to scare guests who were asking about one of the yet unfinished rooms that was unavailable for bookings due to renovations. And so the legend was born. And I have heard that in B340, the Disney company would kind of turn certain rooms into kind of like use the same animatronics and tricks in the Haunted Mansion ride. You
Right.
know, doors would open and close, closets, whatever, water would turn on.
Hmm.
But it was all set up. It was all set up by the
Fake. Hmm.
fake. It was all fake by Disney because they
Hmm.
wanted to portray, like you said, they had this whole vision.
Right.
Yeah, so from that, the legend was born. But if the tales are true, then unbridled psychokinetic thought energy would charge the room to cause manifestations of nomadic spirits that, to me, is even cooler than a haunt. Kind of like a tulpa, enough people
Hmm.
think it's true, and so it is just thought
It
into
becomes true.
existence.
Hmm.
Yes. So whatever happened in the room to give it its spirited beginnings, there is real activity in there now. Covers have been reportedly pulled off guests while sleeping, clothes hangers rattle, footsteps can be heard, as can knocks and more. The paranormal activity is so frequent and intense that some members of the crew refuse to go inside. So, and for the first time since the 80s, they had finally reopened the room for check-ins in 2019. In fact, shortly before we recorded our original episode on the Queen Mary.
Okay.
So, in the first week since the room had been open to reservations back then, there had been 40 bookings. The stateroom has been entirely redone and open to guests on Friday, April 13th. They opened it for the first time. Aside from it being haunted, it was just a really beautifully redone room. The space was warm and comforting with modern amenities, classic elegance. Hard to kind of imagine being scared in that room because it was just so nice.
Really pretty. Yeah.
Yeah. So to enhance the scary quota, the stateroom featured some spooky extras: a Ouija board, tarot cards, ghost hunting equipment, and electric candles.
Oh.
And then the walls are covered with pictures of ghosts and stories of guest encounters. In the mirror were directions, which I thought was so funny. In the mirror on the side were directions for summoning Bloody Mary printed on the wall between the hairdryer and the individually wrapped soaps.
Nice.
I don't know what it looks like today. I couldn't find anything on what B340 is like now.
Now,
But
didn't is this the room that Disney forgot their stuff in? Like, didn't they? This is the
yes.
same room, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
that they had set it up as, to be fake,
Yeah.
but then Disney left, and then
Yes.
a new owner took over and didn't realize that all that shit was in there, and it was scaring the crap out of people.
Yeah. And then they
That
figured
was
it
part of
out.
it.
Then they
Yeah,
found,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then stuff kept happening, but yeah,
Right.
kind of funny.
So
Okay.
that might be where it all started. That people believed it was this. The rumors got around people. You know what I mean? Like
I
thought
just think it's
energy.
hilarious that Disney left stuff in there. Like their animatronics are still going off,
Right.
scaring the
Scaring the
people
shit out of people. Right.
who like it's not the haunted mansion right now. Like, but they think they're having a nice time,
Exactly.
paying all this money for this fancy room, and all of a sudden, like things are going off. And,
Right. And then people are leaving in the middle of the night. They're not
right.
keeping their reservations. Like the hotel started losing money on it. And then they were like, we got to close this room.
Mm,
But, the paranormal, the with the rise of paranormal reality shows and things like that, that's all come back around now. And now people like us are paying
pay a
top
premium.
dollar to
Yeah.
stay at these fucking places. Stanley Hotel, I'm looking at you. So that's room B340. Now let's talk a little bit about your buddy John Petter, who died in what is now called Shaft Alley and was given the nickname Half Hatch Harry.
That's just mean.
That's so mean. So, further paranormal activity down in the engine room, especially around hatch door number 13. An infamous ghost from aboard the Queen Mary is the one of John Petter. He is also known by some as Half-Hatch Harry due to the unfortunate details of his death. So, like you mentioned, in 1966, during a routine drill, the crewman, who was only 18 at the time, reportedly played a daredevil's game of chicken, trying to run through a watertight door before it closed during its 60-second closing process. He gravely miscalculated, and the door crushed him from collarbone to liver. So, Petter still seems to have his daredevil nature, as around door 13, where he met his demise, dark silhouettes have been spotted skulking, even going as far as to chase workers and create loud metallic noises to frighten the guests. His ghost was regularly spotted by visitors prior to the pandemic, with some reporting the sound of footsteps and someone running behind them alongside the echo of a man whistling. So those visiting Shaft Alley, which gets his name, nope, with those visiting Shaft Alley, which gets its name, there it is, from being a long, narrow passageway from the engine room to the stern, have encountered the ghostly crewman, feeling the touch of a hand and noticing spots of grease that bear the fingerprints of an unseen entity upon their faces.
Ew.
Right? With greasy
It was
fingers.
fine with it until like greasy fingers on my face. No.
Come on, you have a 10-year-old son. Like, you're not used to that.
He's constantly trying to touch my face, and I'm like, no, stop, no, stop. Don't touch my face.
Some even have claimed to see the figure of a young bearded man in blue overalls out of the corner of their eye, while other visitors encountered a young engineer wandering the hallways asking about a missing wrench, who then disappears back into the structure of the ship. A former tour guide stated that they turned around and standing behind them on the step was a young man in dirty blue overalls. He stepped aside to let the man pass, and when he looked back up, the man wasn't there. He was just gone. Several people have also reported coming into contact with a little girl in the heart of the ship's engine area in this exact space, sometimes sucking her thumb and sometimes with a doll in her hand. I just threw that in there because she's in the same area that this John Petter is. So here's the story of Senior Second Officer William E. Stark. This poor guy. It's a sad story, but it's like, oh God, like how, what? In September of 1949, William Eric Stark got permission from his commanding officer to have a drink and to have a drink? No. And gin was his drink of choice. Mm-hmm. Water is mine, and I need more of it apparently. But he was unable to locate the bottle, so a steward by the name of F.R. Stokes located the bottle and gave it to him. What they didn't realize is that another shipmate used an empty gin bottle to store cleaning fluid, specifically tetrachloride, which is a solvent, a fire suppressant, and a refrigerant. You don't want to be drinking this. Not gin. I mean, sometimes gin can taste like maybe some of those things, but no. Mm-mm. You don't want to drink any of that stuff. So he downed it. It didn't immediately kill him, but he felt the effects immediately. According to the report from the man who gave him the bottle, he said, quote, "Mr. Stark came to my cabin again and said, I have drunk some kind of acid. I said, I'm sorry, sir. I thought it was gin. In the days that followed, he fell into a coma and died." So he has been seen walking through his personal quarters along the main deck and the promenade. Tour guides have seen him standing near the control panel in the aft engine room with a clipboard in hand. In our original episode, Archie goes, when I said that, Archie goes, "Sometimes you'll never leave middle management." And I was just like, it's funny all over again. It's so true. It was funny all over again, so I threw it back in this script. Some people speculate that he's still hanging around the Queen Mary because he's still looking for his, quote, nip of gin. So, apparently he has not found it yet.
Somebody didn't learn their lesson.
I mean, listen. Also, don't use empty alcohol bottles for cleaning solvent because somebody's going to do it again.
That's fucking weird.
Isn't it weird? So the first class pool is another hotspot, a hotbed of paranormal activity. Although the swimming pool has been abandoned for some time due to structural issues that defy California's safety codes, it was once a popular epitome of opulence. It was decorated with the most intricate mosaic tiles, an illuminated fountain, and a mother of pearl ceiling. It just sounds gorgeous. And it does, like I said, it remains one of the most potent hotspots for ghostly apparitions. I do want to tell everybody again, as I did in the original episode, all of the pools on the Queen Mary have been drained. They are not, there's no water in any of the pools on the Queen Mary anymore. So, various sightings of collected presences have been recorded, including a young woman in a tennis skirt who saunters downstairs before disappearing behind a pillar. There's also an older woman wearing a wedding dress and a young boy in a suit. I was going to say in a suit. Nope. In a suit, standing next to the pool, and a little girl in a blue dress. Stands alongside. No. God damn, words are hard tonight. Alongside a cloud of steam that billows out of nowhere. That sounds dangerous. Children don't do that. Stay away from steam.
Stay away from children who, steam.
Steam. You tend to stay away from children who steam. It's not good. One tour guide was walking into the pool area about 11 a.m. and he saw a young woman walking up the stairs. He would go on to describe this woman as being dressed out of the era. And saying, quote, she was something out of the 1960s, straight out of Woodstock. She had long blonde hair down to her waist, dark tortoiseshell glasses, and a burnt orange turtleneck vest. And in the original episode we did, I was like, yeah, that is weird. But now I feel like that's coming back. So I'm like, that could have been just anybody.
Right.
I mean,
she could have been on her way to Coachella, same fucking outfit.
Listen, Burning Man, before it went crazy, she was on her way there. So he paused at the pillar to let her by. And when he turned to ask if he could help, she had vanished. And this was one thing that I thought was really interesting, is that he noticed the woman made no noise as she was walking. So I guess in that area, there were a lot of loose tiles. It's very echoey. There's no water in the pools. It's, mosaics everywhere. Right. You can hear yourself and other people walk through it. But she made no noise walking past him whatsoever. Yeah. So there's also the woman in a bathing suit. And this person...
Not a woman in a bathing suit.
It's terrifying. It is terrifying. It doesn't even cover her funnels. So it's bad. Goodness. It's bad. The Queen Mary's passenger history is too dense to identify who this person could have been, but she appears to be in her 20s or 30s, and she's seen in an early to mid 1900s style bathing suit. She's most often seen heading to the changing rooms or walking along the edge of the pool. What's interesting is people have claimed to see wet footprints or puddles of water just before she materializes.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The next one I'm going to tell you guys about is Jackie. And Jackie is the famous little girl spirit that is found at the first class pool. So she's also one of the most beloved spirits on the ship. Her full name was Jacqueline Porin. Now, Peter James, that late psychic that I told you about, who said there was about 600 spirits on the ship, he first found Jackie, who was about a young girl, about 5 to 6 years old. He found her in 1991 while exploiting? No. Sorry, that sounded like a really bad start to a terrible story. He found a young girl about 5 or 6 years of age in 1991 while exploring the Royal Theatre with a film crew. He asked who she was, and she audibly replied in an EVP, "Meet me in the other pool." James was confused because he didn't realize that the room he was in had been the second-class swimming pool during the ship's sailing days. So he did as she asked, and he met her in the first-class pool, and what transpired there has now become part of paranormal legend. Peter conversed with Jackie for over 10 minutes, which is actually really rare to be able to communicate with a spirit for that long. The whole conversation was caught on camera. This event helped launch Peter into the spotlight and spawned the hit television show Sightings.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
So, over the intervening years, many have tried to communicate with Jackie, and she has been very free with her time. She's got a very playful side, and she likes to have fun with people by playing peekaboo from the upstairs balcony. She will allow a glimpse of herself and then quickly duck down behind the balcony only to appear in another part of the pool to repeat her game. She's been heard giggling, laughing, playing, and splashing in water. But again, there's no water in these pools, so tour guides and their guests have observed all of this. With one time they watched a wet child-sized footprints heading toward the locker room. With the guide stating, "I don't know that I know that I saw what I saw. I'm not sure why I saw it, but I know that it was there." So that reminded me of the whole Friends thing. They don't know, we know, they know, we know. You know? I was like, that was a lot of sauce. Many times people have walked through the pool. They have heard her plaintively calling for her mommy and asking for her teddy bear, which I think is really sad, but also has a tinge of creepiness to it. It's believed that she remains on the ship looking for her mother, but so little is known about this child that we really can only just speculate. Perhaps the lack of any information for this little girl is due to her possibly being part of the War Bride cruises. What we do know is that she drowned in the second class pool and she now likes to play in the first class pool. Who's going to stop her? She's a ghost.
I mean, fucking come up, little one, come up.
Let's party up here with the mosaic mother of pearl tile. She does get around the ship, however, and she's been seen in many other areas. She's one of the most recorded spirits aboard the Queen Mary. Some investigators have asked her to sing them a song, and occasionally she's been captured doing just that when asked.
Aww.
Yeah. So there's another ghost, the lady in white. This ghost has been known to sing to Jackie. There's also a girl known as Sarah who has taken it upon herself to be Jackie's protector. And I found an article that said that there is a ghost there known to most folks as Grumpy, and I've never heard of this ghost in any other thing I've done, even last research. Mm-hmm. But he also seems to have taken an interest in this child, though why he has or who he is, nobody has been able to discover yet. So, John Henry is another individual that died on the ship that is another frequently seen and experienced apparition. He's believed to have died in the generator room during the construction of the Queen Mary in the 1930s. Today complaints of noises, and I put in my notes, I typed noses. Today complaints of, the sentence is today complaints of noises come through the walls, and I typed noses, and I was like, how terrifying would that have been?
Just a nose.
See a nose come through the wall. So I was like, I typed noses, LOL, literally LOL. Anyway, noises. And shadow figures plague that area. There are reports of being touched, their cheeks brushed, being put, I know how you would love that, being pushed or tugged on. Also claims of spirits looking down on people through a hole in the ceiling and then darting away, as well as clanks and bangs are reported in this area, which have been concluded to be the sounds that you would hear when constructing a ship.
Interesting.
Cool. So the restaurants and the lounges. One server noticed a woman who caught her attention due to the way she was dressed. She was wearing an afternoon cocktail type of dress from the 30s or 40s. She had real fancy. She had dark hair that was rolled at the sides and no makeup. She seemed pale and she didn't move. That was the one thing that stood out to this server. She never moved. She just sat there. So the server moved on to a different table she was setting, and she turned back around to look at her, and there was no woman sitting there. This woman is frequently seen. Bartenders claim to see a ghost named Bruce. They always feel something watching them, and it tends to be Bruce, and he also likes to move wine glasses around. Don't touch my wine glass, Bruce.
Fucking Bruce.
Fucking Bruce, man. I'll be like, Laura, watch my wine glass. I'm going to be right
Don't
back.
let Bruce touch it.
Don't let Bruce touch it. So the former Sir Winston's restaurant and lounge had a spirit there who showed up in a top hat and tails with slicked back hair. And I say former because that's one of the restaurants that they've changed. So Sir Winston's isn't there anymore. But this guy is known as the Dude.
He sounds like the fucking dude.
He sounds like the dude.
He's got a top hat and tails. I mean,
listen, they all agree that it's not Churchill himself. This figure is very dapper. I don't know if that was a slight to Churchill, but I mean, yeah, whatever. He's been seen in corridors, but mostly in this restaurant. He's known to loudly clear his throat behind a guest to get their attention, and when they turn, then he disappears. Others see him making a hasty retreat through the wall and into the men's restroom. This is the part where Archie was like, that would be me. And I'm like, it absolutely would. Pay attention to me, but when we do, you're like, run away.
I'm out.
I'm out. So this ghost has been seen drinking at the bar, but when someone approaches him to ask him a question or have a conversation, he vanishes. Churchill is there, however. So often, Churchill often stated that the ship was his headquarters on the sea. It was also during one of these trips that he took on the Queen Mary where he signed the D-Day Declaration. So guests have reported sighting him in his private quarters, the promenade, the sun and sports decks, and M deck. So thumps, bumps, and throat clearing, and the overpowering smell of cigar smoke have been reported in his empty suite and the promenade deck, even though smoking is not allowed anywhere on the ship. So that would be cool, but at the same time, I can't stand the smell of cigars. Now, here's some new locations that I found since the first time we covered the ship. The isolation ward. Yeah. So the isolation ward is not really a pleasant area of any ship. It's, where the sick and the dying are kept living out their final days and where prisoners are sometimes placed to atone for their crimes. So not a really lovely place. And the Queen Mary's isolation ward saw its fair share of visitors over its decades of service. And it seems that some of those folks have never left. Visitors down there on tours and during explorations have felt presidents. Nope. What the hell? This is a terrible episode. We're going to have to revisit.
Feeling up presidents down there. Winston, don't go down there.
Oh my God. We're going to have to redo this episode. Fuck. Have felt presences and seen shadowy figures.
They're going to get the prime minister next.
Good God. Perhaps nothing too out of the ordinary given it's a haunted ship, but considering the disease and deaths that took place in the room, the experiences are kind of made all the more creepy. So if that wasn't bad enough, there is a placard upon one wall of the isolation ward detailing the names of all of those known to have died upon the ship, as well as the causes of their deaths. Upon it, you can see that more passengers actually died on board than the crew did. So next time you want to stay there. B474. Now, this is one that I did cover in the original episode, and it is one of the most chilling stories from the Queen Mary. It's the murder of a family inside room B474. For unknown reasons, they're clothed.
Did they go to the Clyde? Go on.
They're from the Clyde in Scotland, as we learned in the beginning.
In Scotland.
Their cold-blooded killer of a father strangled the mother and sisters and then shot his last remaining daughter by the name of Dana in the room's bathroom before turning the gun on himself. So, as if the brutal murder wasn't enough, the ghost of a young girl who is said to be Dana is still around. She's often seen in the archive and cargo areas of the ship, as well as playing and hiding amongst the crates below decks. Mm-hmm. Investigators have gone down there in an attempt to find her, to get some answers, and claim that proof of her existence. Because there's not a lot of backing up that we can find about this murder story. Mm-hmm. So they say that she has been found in the form of orbs and mists in photos. She's also been experienced near the second-class pool. Of course, B474 is said to be rife with paranormal activity, most likely stemming from the awful events of what occurred there. Dana is not a malicious ghost, though. She is mostly seen playing and occasionally calling out for her mother, which I think is... The little kid ghosts that are looking for their parents really make me sad.
Me too.
Yeah. Oh, your dog. She's muting because the dog is barking. There's also the Tall Man. Now, this is a new one. Presumably dating back from the Queen Mary's first voyages in the 30s, comes a ghostly figure seen on many separate occasions. Apparently, this man is tall, hence the name, with dark hair and dressed in 1930s style clothing. He's been spotted around the first class suites, walking around to only disappear in the blink of an eye. Seems friendly enough, though. Guests and staff have watched him smile at them as he continues on his journey. So, at least he's happy.
That's nice.
That's nice. The rooms around the first class suites are not as chipper, though, it seems. So inside these rooms, lights turn on in the middle of the night, phones ring only to have nobody at the other end, and water begins running by itself. So I did watch the BuzzFeed Unsolved about this, and Ryan Bergara even reported the faucet running on its own accord in his first stay on the Queen Mary. And as he entered the room, his toothpaste was like knocked off the counter by an unseen force and fell to the floor. So whether these are the doings of the Tall Man or by someone else, we may never know. So here are some more little small things to round this out real nice. I lost my place. The women's changing rooms. It's a really cramped and dark space with numerous tiny rooms lined up on both sides. They're located at the back of the pool and are said to hold a swirling vortex of negative energy, something like a dimensional gateway. They produce heavy feelings detected by several psychics. Some say this could be due to a woman who had been raped there at one time. I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Swirling vortex of negative energy, that checks.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So the lady in white that I talked to you about earlier, which is very protective of Jackie, some legends are hundreds of years old with reported sightings of a woman in white or a child running around a ship in little period attire. This woman's origins are unknown. The lady in white is said to be a first-class passenger who is still dancing in the Queen's salon of the ship in a long gown. She's also been seen in the lobby near the piano. And when she's not dancing, she can be seen gliding down the stairs to the lobby, walking past the corridors, or disappearing near the elevator. So it's not just humans that haunt the ship. There are cats that haunt the ship as well. The changing rooms near the first and third class pools have captured EVPs of meowing cats.
That's so great. Well, because they had like dog areas and all kinds of stuff. Like
that's what you're saying.
It was meow.
Yeah. So cats too. Some claim feeling something invisible brush against their legs. Years of searching have failed to turn up any cats anywhere on the ship. So
I love it.
Now, here's some miscellaneous stuff. Other occurrences range from changing room temperatures to hearing doors slam shut without warning while visitors board. Despite all these tales, the true origin of this haunted ship is yet to be discovered. Although, I think from Laura's history, the collision with the Curacoa, the many people that were dying simply from the heat, and it was, would you say, one burial at sea every 4 hours?
Yeah,
That's a lot of death.
And there could have been, we were talking about the banging earlier. That could have been like the guys trying to get out of there. Like it doesn't.
Oh shit, you're right.
Because it was so hot and so like they were. I mean, you've seen the pictures, right?
Yeah.
Where they're just stacks
Crammed.
and stacks of bunks, like so cramped in there. So
Yeah.
That gives my claustrophobic ass like the heebie-jeebies real fast. So.
Would you ever stay on the Queen Mary?
Yeah.
Now that like the state, have you ever gone on a cruise? I've never been on a cruise.
I have never been on a cruise, mostly because
The
I
Titanic.
want to go somewhere and experience the culture now. But when like you are on a cruise, it doesn't seem like you get a lot of time to experience like off the ship. It seems like you're mostly filing on and off. Like I would like to do an Alaskan cruise or something like that where you a big draw of it is actually you're going to see from the ship.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people that I know have gone on Alaskan cruises and say they're just
and a lot
stunning.
of people love cruises, which is that's
totally
that's
fine
for them. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. So many passengers have reported seeing lights dancing around certain decks on the Queen Mary, as well as hearing voices whispering from empty hallways. Despite years of skeptics and non-believers, these eerie tales still resonate with many visitors on board this haunted vessel. World War II uniform-clad soldiers have also been spotted roaming around the A, B, and M decks. EVPs of voices speaking of military duties and commands have also been captured. So,
Interesting. Yeah.
In closing, finally we're here, guys, closing it up, and we're at an hour and a half. Yeah, so an hour
Not bad,
of my part. Most of the Queen Mary's 355 rooms are considered to be haunted. Upon check-in, the front desk will provide a list of every room that has had reported instances of paranormal activity. But of all 12 decks, the B deck is considered the hub of supernatural activity, and it is often compared to the fourth floor of the Stanley Hotel with regard to paranormal activity, which you and I are very familiar with.
Sure.
So, she is located at 1126 Queens Highway in Long Beach, California, 90802. If you have any questions about rates, reservations, anything like that, phone number is 562-435-3510. And you can check out all of her new upgrades and things that are going on with her now at queenmary.com. And to that I say, thank you for revisiting the Queen Mary with us, guys.
Yes, thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. So thank you so much. You found a lot of stuff that I didn't know, that I hadn't heard before. So as always, I would say bang up job, but I think that's insensitive given what happened on the ship. Crash, bang, yeah, you know. Anyway, you want to tell people where they can follow us should they choose to do so?
Sure. You can follow us at... You want to click the thing?
Man, I tried to click the thing.
On Instagram, Facebook, and the TikTok at HOH Podcast. And also on the TikTok at HOH Carrie and at HOAH co-host Laura.
Oh my God. This episode didn't go a whole lot better than the first one. And yeah, I believe it. I am the problem. I am the anti-hero of the Queen Mary. I'm the common denominator in all of it. So thank you guys very, very much. We have a lot more to record for you, so we're going to hop off of here. We're going to record some more episodes because this bitch is going on vacation. And yeah, not this bitch, that bitch. That bitch. Over here. Yeah. Anyway, we've got more to record, so you're going to see me in this outfit for a few weeks. Love you. We will see you next time. And as we always say, stay safe out there because you never know.
Who?
Just say it all.
Or what is listening?
Or banging on the ship to be let in. Bye, guys.
Thank you.